They say money makes people shine. But in that ballroom with chandeliers dripping like golden rain and laughter bouncing off polished marble floors, I felt dull, out of place, like a photograph faded at the edges. I stood near the back, swirling a glass of ginger ale I didn't really want, watching my daughter Charlotte laugh beside her husband. Everett Carmichael, real estate mogul, fundraiser darling, millionaire with a watch that cost more than my car. I wore the same navy blue suit I'd worn to Charlotte's college graduation, and her wedding, the one Eleanor gave me on our 25th anniversary. The lapels were thinning, the seams tired, but I kept it pressed, kept it sacred, because it still smelled faintly of cedar and her perfume, because it reminded me who I was. Then I heard Everett's voice, loud enough to carry, sharp enough to cut. "Can someone tell me why he still wears that relic?" He chuckled to a group of donors. "My father-in-law's dressed like he wandered in from a time capsule." Laughter followed, polite, rehearsed. My hand instinctively went to the tie clip on my chest, small, silver, shaped like a leaf. Eleanor's final gift before she passed, something to anchor you when the world moves too fast, she'd said. I carried it like armor, but it couldn't stop this. I didn't flinch. I didn't look at Charlotte. But inside, something folded. Then, over the microphone, a voice boomed through the speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen," said the host, Randall Burke, "before we begin the auction, we have a special acknowledgement." I turned my gaze upward, unsure where it would land. "We want to recognize someone who's given quietly, consistently, and generously to this hospital for over 15 years. A man whose name you may not know, but whose donations have saved lives. Mr. Samuel Adler, would you please join us on stage?" For a moment, I thought I'd misheard. Everett did a double take. Charlotte's eyes welled instantly. The spotlight moved and landed on me. Cliffhanger. As I step forward through the crowd, Everett mutters, "This has to be a mistake." Applause followed me, hesitant at first, then rising. I walked slowly, the fabric of my old suit rustling with each step. Familiar, loyal, even if it didn't belong in a room like this anymore. The path to the stage felt longer than it should have. I could feel the weight of eyes on my back, some curious, others amused, a few stunned. Everett remained frozen, one eyebrow raised, arms folded tightly across his chest, like a man watching a magician reveal the trick wasn't magic, but truth. Charlotte smiled faintly as I passed, her hands clasped at her waist, lips trembling. Randall Burke met me at the steps, his hand outstretched. "Mr. Adler," he said warmly. "It's about time these folks knew who's been keeping the pediatric ICU from collapsing all these years." I shook his hand, nodding once. I wasn't a man of stages. I never craved the light. I just wanted to help in the shadows, where the stories didn't require applause. Behind the microphone, I squinted past the spotlight. The audience melted into silhouettes, jewelry glinting, tuxedos polished, smiles tightened. "Thank you," I said, clearing my throat. "I didn't expect this." A soft laugh rippled across the room. "I was asked to say something," I continued, "but I won't speak about generosity or legacy. I want to tell you a story." The room quieted. Even Everett leaned forward slightly. 15 years ago, I lost my wife to lymphoma. Eleanor was everything. She was the steady wind in my sails, and she died in the same hospital this gala is supporting tonight. I paused, and for a second I swore I heard her voice again, whispering encouragement. My fingers grazed the leaf-shaped tie clip at my chest. My daughter was 17 at the time. Charlotte, she's here tonight. Eyes turned toward her. Her breath caught. She gave a small nod. After Eleanor passed, we both drifted. We were in the same house, but we weren't together. I didn't know how to grieve with her. I only knew how to grieve near her. So I found purpose. I began donating anonymously. One wing, then a floor. But I never wanted recognition. I looked down at my aging suit. This is the suit I wore when Eleanor took her last breath. I wear it every year to this gala. It reminds me why I started giving, why I never stopped. I raised my eyes again. Don't judge a man by how worn his jacket looks. Sometimes the fabric carries more stories than a diamond ever could. Silence. Then applause, full, unfiltered. I stepped back from the microphone, heart pounding. Randall clapped me on the shoulder. That, he whispered, was the speech of the night. Cliffhanger. As I stepped off the stage, Everett blocked my path, his expression unreadable. "You planned this, didn't you?" he hissed. Everett's words echoed as I moved past him. "You planned this?" I didn't respond, not because I didn't have words, but because I knew whatever I said would only deepen the chasm already forming between us. Some truths don't need defending. They just need time. That night, after the gala ended and the ballroom emptied, Charlotte came home with me. She didn't say much in the car, just stared out the window like the city lights might answer questions she hadn't asked yet. Her designer heels sat beside her, feet tucked under her legs like she was 10 again, afraid to ask me for a story at bedtime. The house creaked as we entered, the way old homes do when they remember you. She set her clutch down gently on the foyer table. I turned on the lamp beside the faded couch Eleanor once picked out on a rainy Saturday in Baltimore. Everything was quiet. Then Charlotte spoke. "You didn't tell me you were still donating." I didn't think it mattered anymore. Her eyes, so much like her mother's, found mine. "It does." We sat down in the living room. She curled into the same corner she always used to claim, knees pulled up, arms wrapped around herself. I saw the shadow of the little girl who once used to call herself my book buddy. We used to read together every Saturday morning, her with fairy tales, me with the newspaper. She'd interrupt every headline to tell me how the princess could have saved herself. That was before Eleanor got sick, before the chemotherapy appointments replaced piano recitals, before late-night emergency room visits replaced bedtime stories, before Charlotte started walking quieter in the house, as if volume could hurt us more. When Eleanor died, something cracked. Not just in me, in her too. I kept giving to the hospital, quietly, silently. I thought if I helped other children, other fathers, avoid what we lived through, maybe that would be enough. But I never asked Charlotte how she was healing. I never let her see me cry. "Why that suit?" she asked, her voice small. I looked down at it, the navy blue wool, the thinning shoulders, the silver leaf tie clip glinting under the lamp. "I wore it the last time I held her hand," I said. I thought if I kept wearing it, she wouldn't feel so far away." Charlotte didn't say anything, just reached over, took my hand and squeezed. "I used to think you stopped talking because you didn't care," she whispered. "But now I think you were just too broken to find the words." I nodded, swallowing hard. "You and I said, we lost her in the same moment, but we grieved in separate rooms." Cliffhanger. Then Charlotte's phone lit up on the coffee table, buzzing with a new message. She looked at it. Her face went pale. "Dad, we need to talk. It's about Everett." Charlotte stared at the phone as if it might shatter in her hands. She didn't open the message, not right away. Instead, she locked the screen, turned it face down on the table and leaned back with a sharp exhale. "I didn't come here tonight just to see you," she said finally. "I needed to be away from him, from the way things have been." The room seemed to quiet even more, like the walls themselves were listening. "What's going on, Charlotte?" She didn't answer at first. Her fingers brushed over the armrest, tracing the worn stitching like it might anchor her to something solid. "Everett changed after the wedding. At first I thought it was stress, the business, the constant travel, but then—" She trailed off, then straightened her back. "About a year ago, I found a receipt. A hotel in Chicago. He told me it was for a board meeting, but there was no meeting. I checked. I even called the hotel. He never stayed in the room he paid for." I felt my stomach tighten. He told me I was imagining things, that I was being paranoid. And maybe I was at first. But things kept happening. Phone calls he wouldn't answer around me, locked drawers, and when I asked questions, he'd go cold. Make me feel like I was the one ruining the peace. My fists curled slightly in my lap. "I've spent the past year trying to be enough," she continued. "Dress a certain way, smile when I didn't want to, keep the house perfect, laugh at the right times during dinners with people I don't even like, all to keep him from slipping further away. Her voice broke then, just a little, just enough. I reached over and placed my hand on hers again. Her skin felt cold. "You don't need to carry this alone," I said quietly. She nodded. "I know. That's why I came." She picked up the phone again, and this time opened the message. It was from Everett. "We need to talk. You embarrassed me tonight. Don't make things worse. Come home now." Her fingers trembled. "I don't think I can go back to him," she whispered. "But I don't know what it means if I don't." You don't have to decide that tonight," I said. "Just be here, rest, let the noise quiet down." She leaned her head on my shoulder like she hadn't done in years, and I felt the heaviness in her. Years of pretending, years of being the perfect wife, years of silence between us. "I used to be proud of the way he looked at me," she murmured, "but lately, it's like he sees something in me that's in his way." Cliffhanger. Just then, a soft ding broke the quiet. Another message. But it wasn't from Everett. It was from someone else, and the name on the screen made her gasp. "Oh my God," she whispered. "Why would he be texting me?" Charlotte's hand hovered over the screen, her breath caught in her throat. I leaned slightly to see the name, Reed Donnelly. I didn't know the name, but Charlotte did. She tapped the message open, her eyes scanning it quickly, then again, slower, like she didn't trust what she was reading. "I know what Everett's been doing. You deserve to know too. If you're ready, meet me tomorrow at 10 a.m. Juniper Cafe on 5th. Please don't tell him." Her fingers trembled. I asked gently, "Who is he?" She shook her head. "I don't know. I mean, I've never met him. But the name, I've heard it." She set the phone down and buried her face in her hands. "Reed is the name Everett accidentally said once, in his sleep. I asked him about it the next day, and he said it was someone from college. But now..." Her voice trailed into silence. I stood up and walked to the kitchen, not because I needed water, but because I needed space, a moment to think. Something wasn't adding up. When I returned, Charlotte was staring at the fireplace mantel, at the photo of her and Everett on their wedding day. Her smile in that picture was radiant, untouched, hopeful, the kind of smile that breaks your heart when you see what came after. "Do you think I should go?" she asked. I sat beside her. "That depends." "Do you want the truth?" She nodded slowly. "Then go." "But what if it's worse than I think? Then at least it's not hidden anymore." She looked down at the floor. "I feel like I've spent so long building a life out of smoke. Appearances, parties, the right words, the right clothes, but underneath it all I was just afraid." "You're not that woman anymore," I said. She looked at me, eyes brimming. "You really believe that?" "I saw you walk away tonight," I said. "You chose yourself. That's not fear, that's courage." The room went quiet again, but this time it didn't feel heavy. Charlotte glanced once more at the message, then stood. "Juniper Cafe," she whispered. I nodded. "It's a good place. I used to take your mother there when the leaves turned red." "I remember," she said, a small smile forming. I stood too, reached for the photo of her and Everett. "Leave this here," I said, placing it face down on the mantel. "Let it rest." Cliffhanger. The next morning, as Charlotte prepares to leave for the cafe, she finds a small manila envelope slipped under the front door. No name, no address, just one word in black ink. Reed. The envelope sat like a wound on the floor, plain, thin, but heavy with implication. Charlotte bent down and picked it up slowly, turning it over in her hands as if it might burn her. "Did you see anyone come to the door?" she asked. I shook my head. "Nothing." "And I was in the kitchen the whole time." She hesitated, then slid a finger beneath the flap and opened it. Inside were printed photographs. At first, she didn't speak, just stared. Then her fingers tightened. I stepped closer. The first photo was of Everett, seated in an unfamiliar restaurant booth, laughing with someone we couldn't see. The timestamp showed a date 2 months ago, a day he claimed to be in Los Angeles for a client meeting. The second photo hit harder. Same booth, same Everett. But this time the other person was visible. A man, handsome, well-dressed, leaning in close, and Everett, smiling, eyes locked, his hand resting lightly on the man's wrist. Charlotte inhaled sharply. The third photo showed them outside, Everett's arm draped across the other man's shoulders. Then a typed note fell out from behind the photos. "There's more. This is only the beginning. Ask him about Reed. Ask him who he's really protecting." Charlotte backed away like the envelope had bitten her. She looked at me, confused, betrayed, but also deeply tired. "I don't understand," she whispered. "He always made me feel like I was the one hiding, the one with shadows." I sat down at the table, holding the photos in my hand, careful not to crease them. "I think you've been living in the same house as a man who's never told the truth about who he is." "But why marry me?" she asked. "Why pretend?" "Because people like Everett don't pretend for love," I said. "They pretend for control." She wiped her eyes, but the tears kept coming. "And Reed?" she asked. "Maybe someone he loved," I offered. "Maybe someone he betrayed. Or someone who betrayed him." She folded the envelope closed and tucked it in her purse. "I'm still going to that cafe," she said quietly. "I need to know the rest." "Do you want me to come with you?" She shook her head. "I need to walk into this alone." I didn't argue. She was right. At 9:55 a.m., she slipped into her coat and buttoned it with trembling fingers. I handed her the tie clip from my suit pocket, the silver leaf. "Take it," I said. "It kept me grounded through storms. Let it keep you steady too." She looked at me for a long moment, then tucked it gently into her coat pocket. Cliffhanger. At exactly 10:02, Charlotte steps into Juniper Cafe and locks eyes with a man who looks exactly like the one in the photographs. Juniper Cafe was warm, rustic, and smelled faintly of roasted cinnamon and old wood. The place hadn't changed since I used to bring Eleanor here for weekend breakfast dates. That was part of why Charlotte chose it. It wasn't Everett's kind of place. It felt real. She stepped inside with the envelope in her purse and the tie clip pressed into her pocket like a small, steady heartbeat. The man at the back table looked up when she walked in. Tall, with dark eyes and a calm expression that wasn't unfamiliar, but still foreign. He stood as she approached. "You're Charlotte," he said, voice even, low. "You're Reed," she returned. He nodded, motioning to the chair across from him. "Thank you for coming. I know this isn't easy." She sat without taking off her coat. "Why now?" she asked. Reed folded his hands. "Because I couldn't watch you continue to live inside a lie. And because, maybe, I owe you that much." "To me?" she said sharply. "You owe me something?" "I was with Everett for 3 years," Reed said, "before he married you." The words hit her like a drop of cold water down her spine. She blinked, almost sure she'd misheard. "He told me you were a PR relationship," Reed continued. "A family expectation. He said he didn't love you, that you didn't love him, that it was an arrangement and everyone knew it." Charlotte stared at him. "I didn't know." "I know," he said gently. "That's why I'm here." "He said he didn't love me," she repeated. Reed's face softened with something close to pity. "He said a lot of things. I believed him, until I didn't." Charlotte gripped the edge of the table. "He left me 6 months before your wedding," Reed said. "No explanation, just disappeared. I only found out he married you when I saw the announcement in a magazine." "And you kept quiet?" "I didn't know how to reach you. And honestly, I was angry. But when I saw him again last month, when he came to find me, I realized he was still lying, and this time to you too." Charlotte closed her eyes, trying to quiet the storm rising in her chest. "He said he needed help," Reed went on. "He said his wife was too emotional, that she wouldn't understand, that he missed being seen." Charlotte opened her eyes slowly. "I gave him a second chance," Reed said, "and I shouldn't have. That's when I took those photos. When I realized he was using both of us." Charlotte didn't speak. "He wants to keep everything," Reed said. "The image, the business, the lie. And he thinks you're too afraid to leave him. He thinks he can say anything and you'll stay." Charlotte's breath came in shallow waves now. But he's wrong, Reed added. Isn't he? She didn't answer. She stood instead, hands trembling, voice calm. You were right to show me, she said, but you don't owe me anything else. Reed nodded once. He'll try to discredit me if you confront him. He'll deny it all. He's good at that. Charlotte turned to go. Cliffhanger. As she stepped out of the cafe, her phone rang, and this time it wasn't Everett. It was a blocked number. And when she answered, a voice she didn't recognize said, "You need to get home now. He knows." The voice on the phone was calm. Too calm. He knows. Charlotte clutched the phone tighter. Who is this? The caller didn't answer. Just a soft click and then silence. The cafe's warmth felt miles away now. Outside, the air was colder than it should have been in late spring, and her fingers shook as she unlocked the car. She didn't call me. She didn't call anyone. She just drove, faster than she should have, back to my house. I was outside, trimming the hedges that Eleanor once planted, when I saw her pull into the driveway. The way she parked, crooked, rushed, I knew something was wrong. He knows, she said before I could ask. Everett? She nodded. What does he know? I don't know, but he knows I went to meet Reed. Someone told him. Then we should call someone, I said. You shouldn't be alone. But she was already moving toward the house, into the living room, into the heart of what she hadn't wanted to confront. We didn't have to wait long. 15 minutes later, Everett's black Range Rover appeared on the street like a storm rolling in. He didn't rush to the door. He didn't call out. He walked up the steps with eerie calm. I stood beside her as he opened the door. Didn't knock, just walked in like he still owned the space around her. Charlotte, he said, voice low, tight. She stood tall. You met with him, he said. Yes. He looked at me then, as if I were a witness he hadn't invited. This is a private conversation. She's not alone anymore, I said. Everett laughed, humorless. No, she's never alone. She has you, the quiet little father in the old suit. Charlotte's hand went to her coat pocket, the tie clip still inside. Her eyes were steady. Don't, she said. Don't deflect. Everett took a breath, straightened his cuffs. Fine, he said. Let's talk. He didn't sit. He walked the perimeter of the room like a lion in a cage. I made mistakes, he said. But Reed, he's bitter. He's irrelevant. He wasn't irrelevant when you were sleeping with him, Charlotte snapped. That stopped him cold. You said I was the image, she continued. The accessory, the respectable wife, but you never loved me. Everett's eyes darkened. You want me to say it? Fine, I did what I had to do. You don't understand the world I move in. Charlotte stepped forward. No, Everett, you don't understand the world I come from, one where love is supposed to mean something. I saw something shift in his face then, something smaller than regret, but too proud to be sorrow. He turned to leave. But before he did, he looked at me. She's not your responsibility anymore, he said. I stepped forward. She never stopped being mine. Cliffhanger. As Everett left, slamming the door behind him, Charlotte opened her purse to put the tie clip back, only to find something else inside it she didn't remember packing. A folded letter in Eleanor's handwriting. The letter was old, the paper yellowing at the folds. The ink slightly faded, but still strong enough to read. Charlotte sat down slowly on the edge of the couch, the envelope trembling in her hands. She wrote this, she said, barely above a whisper. It's her handwriting. I sat beside her, heart pounding. I hadn't seen that letter in years. She pulled the paper out, unfolding it gently. There was no salutation, no date, just words, written by Eleanor in the fragile months before she passed. If you're reading this, then something's broken. And I hope with all that I have left that it can still be mended. Life will get heavy. You'll be asked to carry things you don't deserve. People will disappoint you. And sometimes the person standing beside you will stop being who you thought they were. But don't let their weight become your own. You are not made to shrink to make someone else feel taller. Remember who you are. And remember this, you will always have a place to return to. Don't be afraid to come home. Love, Mom. Charlotte covered her mouth with her hand. Her shoulders began to shake, first from silence, then from sobs. I didn't speak. I just let her cry. The letter had been tucked away for years in a drawer of Eleanor's things. I had forgotten about it, or maybe I'd chosen to forget, but it had found its way back to the right hands at the exact moment it was meant to. I kept thinking leaving Everett would make me a failure, Charlotte whispered. You're not failing, I said. You're waking up. She leaned her head against my shoulder again, the same way she had as a child after long days at school. I wanted to build a perfect life, she said. I wanted to prove to everyone that I was strong, but I kept confusing holding on with being strong. Sometimes, I said, the strongest thing you can do is let go. The room felt fuller now. Like Eleanor was there, somewhere in the walls, in the silence, in the space between Charlotte's grief and my steady breath. Later, Charlotte folded the letter and placed it in the same pocket where the tie clip still rested. 2 pieces of Eleanor, both carried quietly. She turned to me. I think I need to go back. To Everett? She shook her head. To the apartment, to gather my things. I need to do it myself, to close the door. Then I'll come with you. No, she said, not this time. Cliffhanger. That night, just as she was about to leave for the apartment, she got a call from Everett's assistant. His voice urgent, his words sharp. You need to come now, something's happened, it's serious. The voice on the phone was strained, clipped. This isn't a game, Everett's assistant said. He collapsed in the middle of a client dinner. Paramedics just left. He's at St. Vincent's, you should come. Charlotte didn't speak. She stood still, one hand holding the phone, the other trembling slightly by her side. I watched her. Her face was unreadable, but not cold. It was the face of someone whose pain didn't know where to go. I'll drive you, I said quietly. She hesitated for half a second, then nodded. The drive to the hospital was silent. Not because we had nothing to say, but because words felt irrelevant. The world had shifted again, and all the anger that had defined the past 24 hours now had to make space for something more fragile. Fear, grief, maybe even compassion. At the ER reception desk, Charlotte gave her name. The nurse looked up. Family? She hesitated, then said, Yes, I'm his wife. We were sent to the waiting area. Stark walls, dim lights, the buzz of overhead speakers calling for doctors like clockwork. She sat beside me but leaned forward, hands clasped between her knees, eyes locked on the floor. They said he collapsed, she whispered. I nodded. He always seemed so invincible, she added, almost to herself. He's still human. A nurse approached a few minutes later. Charlotte Carmichael? She stood quickly. Yes? He's stable, the nurse said, but he's asking for you. Alone. Charlotte looked at me. I'll be here, I said. She followed the nurse through the automatic doors, and I watched her disappear down the hallway where I had once walked beside Eleanor, where we had said goodbye without knowing it was the last one. I waited. Minutes turned into an hour. When Charlotte finally returned, she looked pale, quiet, but something in her posture had changed. She was upright, still. How is he? I asked. She sat down. Physically, he'll be okay. It was a stress-related arrhythmia. They'll keep him for observation. And emotionally? She looked away. He cried, said he was scared, said he didn't want to lose me. And? I told him I wasn't his to lose anymore. I exhaled slowly. But I didn't yell, she added. I didn't bring up Reed, or the photos, or the lies. I just sat there while he talked. And when he was done, I said goodbye. She looked me in the eyes, and I meant it. Cliffhanger. As we stood to leave, the nurse approached us again. There's one more thing, she said, handing Charlotte a folded piece of paper. He asked me to give this to you. Charlotte turned the folded paper over in her hands, slowly, hesitantly. The hospital hallway was dim, and the corners of the page were damp from the nurse's hands or Everett's sweat. She didn't know which. She opened it. The handwriting was Everett's. Neat, measured, the kind of writing you expect from someone who spent his life crafting the perfect impression. Charlotte, I don't know if this letter is a selfish act. Maybe it is. You deserve truth, but I gave you performance. You deserved partnership, but I gave you projection. I don't know when I started lying to you. Maybe I never stopped lying to myself. I loved the life we built because it protected me. It gave me a story I could sell to the world, but I never figured out how to be honest in it. And you always deserved honesty. Reed was never a threat to our marriage. He was just someone who saw me before I built all the walls, before the suits and the empire. I saw him again because I wanted to feel something I'd buried. But I buried it because it never fit into the version of myself I thought the world needed. I know now that version came at your expense. I'm sorry, not because I got caught, not because you're leaving, but because I taught you to doubt your worth, and you never should have. If there's any part of you that believes I loved you, that part is right. But sometimes love isn't enough. I'll never ask you to forgive me, but I hope one day you will. Everett Charlotte read the last line twice, then folded the letter back up, slower this time, her expression unreadable. She didn't cry. She didn't crumble. She placed the note in her coat pocket, next to the tie clip and Eleanor's letter. I'm not angry, she said as we walked out of the hospital. Not right now. That might come later, I said gently. Or maybe I've just run out of space for rage. We stepped into the night. The city lights glimmered, and the air smelled faintly of rain and gasoline. She looked up at the sky as if expecting some kind of sign. I feel like I've spent the last 5 years holding my breath. And now? She smiled faintly. I think I just exhaled. Back at home, she unpacked for the first time since arriving, not just her suitcase, but pieces of herself. Memories, scars, and plans. Cliffhanger. The next morning, Charlotte woke before sunrise. I found her in the backyard, barefoot in the grass, holding something in her hands. When I stepped closer, I saw it, the wedding ring resting in her palm like a question. Charlotte stood barefoot in the dew-covered grass, the wedding ring cradled in her hand, like it might dissolve in the early morning light. The sky above her was soft pink and blue, fragile, like a bruise healing. I didn't speak right away. I didn't want to interrupt whatever conversation she was having with herself. Eventually, she turned to me. It doesn't feel like mine anymore, she said. She held out the ring. Simple, elegant, gold. It had once shimmered under gala lights, on magazine covers, in social media posts where smiles were curated like currency. I remember the day he gave it to me, she said. He didn't ask me about the design, just handed it over. Like everything else, it was always his version of love. She looked down at it again. I wanted to believe I fit into it. You tried, I said. That's not nothing. But I don't want to fit in anymore, she said. I want to be whole, on my own terms. Then, without ceremony, she walked to the small pond behind the garden, one Eleanor used to tend with delicate care, and she held the ring over the surface. She didn't throw it. She placed it, gently. It sank slowly, a golden ghost drifting downward until it vanished into reflection. Charlotte turned away. It's not about punishing him, she said. It's about freeing myself. I nodded. Later that morning, she packed a few more boxes, not of clothes, but of memories she'd brought from her old life. Photos, objects, gifts that no longer held comfort. We drove to a donation center. She handed over most of it without hesitation. Only a few things came back home with us. Eleanor's letter, my tie clip, a childhood drawing I'd forgotten she'd made, of the 3 of us under a giant tree. The words, "Home is here," scrawled at the top. She placed that drawing on the fireplace mantel. I think I'm going to stay here for a while, she said. You're always welcome. I don't mean just physically, she said. I mean emotionally. I want to stop running, stop pretending. I want to rebuild. That night, we sat outside under the stars, a fire pit glowing between us. She told me stories I'd never heard, about the loneliness behind her curated life, the way silence became survival, and how easy it was to disappear when everyone around you expected perfection. I listened, not as her father, but as a witness. Cliffhanger. Just as we were heading inside, Charlotte's phone buzzed. One new message. A photo, a sonogram, and a single line of text from an unknown number. He deserves to know. Charlotte stared at the screen, her body frozen. The sonogram image glowed softly in the darkened living room, black and white and infinite, and below it the words, "He deserves to know." Her lips parted, but no sound came. I stood behind her, reading it too. My breath caught in my chest. "You didn't tell me," I said gently. She shook her head. "I didn't know. I suspected, but I didn't let myself believe it." She sank onto the couch, the phone resting on her lap like it weighed more than it should. "That was taken 3 weeks ago," she whispered. "I must have been 8 weeks then." "You're sure it's Everett's?" She nodded slowly. "There's no one else." She stared straight ahead, voice barely audible. "I didn't want to bring a child into a fractured life. I didn't want to become a version of Eleanor I didn't understand. Strong, kind, but burdened. I didn't want to parent through grief." I sat beside her. Not to fix anything, just to be there. "Do you think I'm like her?" she asked suddenly. I turned toward her. "You're your own woman, but the strength, that's hers. And the tenderness, that's always been yours." She wiped her face with her sleeve. "If I keep the baby, I don't want him to feel like a piece of Everett." "He won't be," I said. "He'll be a piece of you, and you're more than anything Everett ever tried to define." She nodded slowly, then looked down at the screen again. "Do I tell him?" she asked. "That's not my answer to give." She took a breath. "Then maybe it's time I start deciding things for myself." The next morning, Charlotte sat at the kitchen table with a blank page and pen. She didn't write to Everett as a wife, or as a victim, or as someone asking for permission. She wrote as a mother. She didn't tell him she forgave him, but she told him he had a responsibility, and that she would take it from here. Later, we walked together to the mailbox. She slid the envelope in with a small exhale. "I still don't know how to do this," she said. "No one ever does," I replied, "but that doesn't mean we stop trying." Cliffhanger. That evening, as we sat watching the sun go down, Charlotte reached for my hand. "Dad," she whispered, "I think I'm ready to tell you the truth about what happened the night Mom died." The sky was stained with fire, sunset folding into dusk. Charlotte's hand tightened around mine. "I've never told anyone this," she said. "Not even Everett, not even myself, really. The quiet around us was sacred, the kind of quiet that knows what's coming and holds space for it." She looked out toward the trees, her voice trembling. "The night Mom died, I wasn't home." I blinked. "She died at the hospital," I said. "I was there, you came after." She nodded. "That's the part you know, but not the reason." I waited. I'd left that day to meet someone, a boy I was seeing in secret. I thought I loved him, thought he was my escape. You and Mom were always so distant. I thought you'd both stop seeing me. I didn't want to be in that house anymore. I wanted noise, passion, something different. She swallowed. I missed her final breath because I was trying to escape the life she gave everything to hold together, and I've been carrying that guilt ever since. My throat tightened. "Dad," she said, tears now streaking down her cheeks, "I thought if I became someone perfect, Everett's wife, the smiling daughter, the silent one, you wouldn't see how much I failed her, how much I failed you." I turned toward her fully, taking her hands in mine. "You didn't fail anyone," I said. "You were 17. You were in pain. And so were we all were. I should have been there. She knew you loved her. You didn't have to be in the room for that to be true. But you were," she said softly. "You watched her go, alone." I nodded. "Yes, and I've lived with that moment every day." She leaned forward, forehead against mine. "Can we forgive each other now?" "We already have," I whispered. We sat there as the stars blinked awake above us. not in silence but in understanding. In the distance, wind passed through the trees Eleanor once planted. I like to believe she was listening. Later that night, I placed the tie clip back in its wooden box. Charlotte tucked her mother's letter into her journal. The pieces we'd carried were not put away, but finally laid to rest. Cliffhanger. The next morning, Charlotte opened her email to find a message from a literary magazine. Subject line, "Submission accepted." Inside was the essay she wrote, the story of the night she stood on the gala stage in her father's old suit. The subject line glowed like a quiet promise. Submission accepted. Charlotte's hands trembled as she opened the email. Her essay, the one she had written late one night after returning from the hospital, had found a home. It wasn't just about Everett. It wasn't about betrayal or secrets or leaving. It was about standing in the spotlight, in an old navy blue suit that didn't fit modern fashion but fit the truth. It was about reclaiming the story of who she was. In the essay she had written, "That night I stood on stage in the shadow of a man who mocked my father's suit. But what he didn't understand was this. That suit held decades of love, loss, devotion. It held the hand of my mother as she died. It held the silence of grief that didn't know how to speak. And it held me, because even when my father didn't have the words, he showed up, and now so will I." I read the piece with tears in my eyes. Charlotte had given voice not only to her own transformation, but to mine, to Eleanor's memory, to the quiet millions who live their grief and healing behind curtains. Later that week, the magazine published it online. It spread faster than either of us expected. Messages came in, from women, fathers, widows, daughters, people who had worn unfashionable suits of silence for years, finally feeling seen. Charlotte didn't respond to Everett's letter when he wrote again. She didn't need to. Forgiveness, we realized, didn't always come wrapped in reconciliation. Sometimes it was the gentle turning of a page, and as summer arrived, Charlotte began writing more, not for publication, but for peace. We still sit on the porch some nights, her hand around a warm mug, mine resting on the armrest, the tie clip now framed on the mantel inside. "I never thought healing would be this quiet," she said once. "It always is," I replied. "Noise is what breaks us. Silence is where we rebuild. And one day when her child asks about the life that came before, she'll tell them, not the story of betrayal or fear, but of second chances, of old suits, and of a mother who chose to walk into truth, and maybe of a father who waited, not with judgment, but with a door always open. You already know how this story began, but now it belongs to her."